I'm going to focus this episode completely on Bittensor. I'm going to tell you why in a second. But essentially, Bittensor TAO is somewhat, I think, confusing, or at least it seems confusing to some people, but it's been around for a while and it's talked about quite a bit. It's probably the largest, or is the largest market cap in AI. So if we look at all the various cryptocurrencies, it's currently sitting number 33 in terms of market cap. We look at top AI category and it's sitting number 1. So I've been doing comparison videos. I'm going to keep doing that in different categories. First category I started with is AI. And I first compared Render down here with Aether. That's a big difference in terms of how many there are here. And I picked one up here, one down there. You might say, why would I do that? Well, all the different categories or narratives, if you will, like AI, many of these do very different things, or at least they focus in different areas. So in my opinion, if I'm looking at AI, let's say all I want to do was invest in AI, which would I pick? There's so many. Should I just pick the top 10 or 20? I like to go through and say, well, what do they do? Render and Aether, and there's a video I posted about 2 days ago comparing those two, because yes, they're in the AI category, but they're really considered decentralized physical infrastructure. They're providing compute power. They're providing hardware. It's not about large language models. They're not creating that. They're not creating an infrastructure so you can build agents. They're just providing compute power. So in AI, if you were to create subcategories, you would have Render and Aether providing compute power. And because that compute power is predominantly GPUs, it's perfect for AI. AI is a sexy industry. Everyone talks about it. So everyone wants to somehow jerry-rig themselves into that category. And that's what those two have done. I did a video on that. Then I was looking through and I was like, all right, I'm going to talk about agents. And two of the top ones are, if we go into the agent category, Fetch, Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, and Virtual. Tomorrow, I'm going to have an episode comparing those two. But as I was doing that, I was also looking at Bittensor since it's number 1. And I think it's somewhat confusing. Let's get into that. I'm Brian, big dumb animal. My disclaimer is, don't do what I do. And not just in crypto, just in general. Just don't do what I do. Because I'm a big dumb animal. Informational purposes only. Let's look at Bittensor. As I showed in the top AI, it's number 1 by market cap, 3 billion. It also has a 7 billion fully diluted market cap. Looks like if I scroll down here, it's also the biggest by fully diluted, by far. The next one is 4 billion Filecoin, but I wouldn't throw them actually in the AI category, to be honest. So Bittensor in terms of AI. Okay, why? Let's look at their tokens in the tokens, what they do. There's a couple websites, and then we'll look at the pricing. Oh, if you would, hit like, put a lot of time into these. Please subscribe so you can see new ones. I got a link down below to my school community, courses, discussions, and stuff. The market cap is 3 billion. The fully diluted value is 7. So it's almost 50%. Why? Because total supply of tokens is around 21 million, and the total circulating supply is around 9 million. So about half of the tokens are out. If we scroll down and just look at the tokens, is there going to be a big dump or something? Is what you want to know. You can see here it's a little bit constantly. Now you might say, wow, that's a lot. This graph actually shows all of the token unlocks until they're 100% out, and it ends in 2045. So it's a little bit month by month over time. I think that's a good thing to see. No problems there. There's a whole section about Bittensor. Let me give you some of the basics. So Bittensor, the idea is what they call decentralized artificial intelligence. So there is no one company or entity that is controlling how it's taught. So if you think of, very high level, decentralized as a box, and it's a brain in there, and the brain is empty, knows nothing. So you have to teach it stuff. You have to give it data and information. And then once you do that, then you can ask it questions, and it tries to figure out the answer and tells you. Well, as you can probably imagine, a lot of what comes out is dependent on what goes in. Now it's learning, but at the same time, it can be persuaded or changed depending upon the kind of data. For example, there are some out there that are creating different models that are specific to different things, like maybe medical. They might put in more medical information because it's trying to help doctors. Maybe engineering or mechanical engineering. You get the idea. So that brain is being taught, and then it's being asked questions and stuff. So if one person or entity owns it, and it's a black box, so to speak, and no one knows what's going in, some people don't like that because they don't feel like they can trust the answers coming out. Let's just say that's the case. So what they're trying to do is create transparency around it. So they're encouraging people to work together and provide things like AI modeling or compute power, and you can participate as an engineer, if you will, in a myriad of ways, and you get rewarded by earning the crypto TAO. You create a wallet, and essentially you're being paid for that assistance, and there's various ways you can take place. Now, one of the reasons that I think a lot of people are sort of confused about what Bittensor is because it looks like they took all their developers and they put them in a room and they said, we need someone with web design experience to create a website so that when people land there, they know what we do, they know our vision, they know our mission, and they said, does anyone have experience doing that? And one person raised their hand and they said, I have an Etch-a-Sketch. And they said, great, you make the homepage and there you go. That's it. So tell me, after looking at that homepage, that you don't know exactly what they do. It's all right there. Straightforward. It stinks. It's horrible. It makes no sense. Why would you do this? There's an about, there's an intro, there's a philosophy, lots of information. I'll put a link to 3 sites. This is the first. Here's the one that I think matters the most. If you're not technical and you just want to learn what they're doing, learn Bittensor. Here you go. This is what they've built already. They call them subnets, and each subnet works on basically a different thing, like maybe cryptography or whatever it may be within AI. They've got 84 teams. They've created 22 apps. Here you go. This is the one spot where it tells you what they do. What is not their Bittensor website that someone just threw together with an Etch-a-Sketch. What is Bittensor? Decentralized network. We just talked about that. Decentralized AI, where computers work together to develop AI. Participants, individuals who contribute their compute power or AI models, can earn TAO. TAO is a network's native cryptocurrency that rewards mining, validating, and staking. You can also participate in those various ways. Now, if you are technical and you're interested, I'll put this link below. Here's the TAO.app, and you can search the various subnets. They have 3D ones. If you click, it'll sort them. Agents, code, compute, cryptography, wherever you might want to get involved. DeFi, it shows you which projects there are, and then you can click into that project. Code repositories, all that kind of stuff if you want to get involved. Now you understand they're creating a decentralized artificial intelligence model with all these various capabilities, and people are rewarded for participating, which is very interesting when you think about it. You know, if you have a company, you can hire an employee. Well, now they're on payroll and you got to deal with health insurance and all this other FICA and all this stuff. And, you know, God forbid you hire someone in another state and that's just a disaster. Now you got to do all kinds of forms again. That's a pain. So then people are like, oh, well, we'll just use contractors. And then that way we just pay them and they got to deal with everything. And then the IRS got onto that and said, well, there's rules. Are you telling them what to do, or are they deciding what to do? If you tell them what to do, they're an employee, not a contractor. They decide what to do, they're a contractor. They came up with something even better. They said, we're going to get all these people to help us for free. And all the people said, no thanks. They said, okay, so we're going to give you crypto to do work for us. And they said, okay, not employees, not contractors, don't have to deal with any of the overhead. They just get crypto when they participate. There's something to learn there. That has nothing to do with crypto in general, but that's a smart business model. Okay, so here is the pricing. This happens to be a daily chart. We're just going to look at 2024 and up till now. This is June of 25. It looks like they peaked around $730. They had a low here of around, let's say, 170, 180. It's around 330. So it's about twice what its low was, and its low was back in April. And from where it is now, to get back to its high in the last 2 years, December of 2024, it would essentially be a 2x. Now, it's interesting, there aren't many cryptos that have a high dollar price, like $334 a token. course, Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I mean in general. But let's take a look at the fact that, yes, it's gone down quite a bit. This is just some fib lines here using that low and essentially these highs. And if you use the closes and opens instead of the wicks, it dropped down below the 50, hit around the 61.8, and has bounced since then. Now, it has been going down for quite a bit, like many cryptos. But let's look at just one indicator. I always love to look at volume to see buying, selling pressure. So what we have here is at this peak, here's the highest OBV. Now that makes sense. Here was a peak, there's the OBV. There's a higher peak, there's a higher OBV. Okay, so that price was legit because it was being pushed up by buyers. But then the price came down, all the way to here. And except for this peak here, it's pretty much been down all the way to there. Now, if we look at the buying pressure to push the price back up from 170-ish to 340-ish, almost double, there's all the buying. That's what you want to see. Okay, so it gave up almost 50%. So you come over here and you look at the OBV, that went, buying pressure pushed it up. That makes sense. But it gave up. Look, see, there's the low price. There's the low OBV. The OBV also seems to have given up about 50%. It went up here and it went down to here. The price went up to there, went down to there. What's that telling us? It's telling us that this is a legit down move. Sometimes you'll see the price coming down. We've looked at cryptos like that on my channel before, and yet you would see the OBV actually going that way. So the price is coming down, but there's more and more people buying, which would mean we're eventually going to break to the upside. We've got that buying pressure. This is not giving us any information other than saying, yeah, this is down because people sold it. And so where's it going to go from here? We really don't know. We could use other indicators, but it's either it could break down, it could break up, not sure yet. So with respect to TAO, and I'm going to do an episode after I look at all the different AI ones, I don't think from what I've seen, there's a decent competitor to TAO. So, I'll say Bittensor. So if you're looking inside AI and you want to choose something in different categories, you might say, okay, I'm first going to look at DPIN, like we talked about the other day, and maybe I'll pick Render because I think it's larger, has a bigger social community. Or maybe I'll pick Aether because I think it's the underdog and it might have a bigger exponential gain. But in DPIN, I'm going to pick one of those. Tomorrow we'll talk about Fetch and Virtual with agents. But with respect to TAO, I would say that's one you might want to have in your portfolio. Again, big dumb animal, informational only, because there's really nothing else like it. However, it's hard to see that it would have as much exponential gains. There's two ways to look at this. Some people would say it's going to do one of the best in AI. Because of the fact that it is the number one in this category with the largest market cap. So therefore, it's the best horse to bet on. The downside probably won't be as much. Maybe the upside might not be as much, but that's the solid, safest bet. And then the other way to look at it is to say it's already at a 7 billion fully diluted. Gosh, a 10x would be 70 billion. How likely do I think that is when in something like Injective is a 1 billion fully diluted, a 10x would only be 10 billion. So do I want to go with something like a Bittensor or an Injective? All right. That's the way to look at it if you're thinking about the odds of it gaining a certain growth rate. I'm looking at it in terms of, with respect to AI, it's basically in a subcategory all by itself. That was it for today. Hope that's helpful. Hope we can all make generational wealth together with crypto. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Please do check out my school community down below. Tons of courses, tons of discussions. I appreciate you watching.